evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and in partnership with Fort Lewis College, we welcome you to this evening's virtual Colorado Congressional District 3 Primary Candidate Forum. My name is Jean Arrow, and I'm the president of the La Plata League. With me tonight is Tiffany Parker, the La Plata County Clerk and Recorder, who will take us through the details of voting in this primary election, and Paul DeBell, the Assistant Professor of Political Science at Fort Lewis College, who will be our moderator. Both Tiffany and Paul are league members and have worked closely with us to encourage all citizens to exercise their rights and responsibilities as voters. The 3rd Congressional District is the largest geographical district in Colorado. It covers the western 1/3 of the state and spreads across the southern part of the state as far east as Pueblo. It also includes Colorado's 2 Native American tribes, the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, headquartered in Toyac, and the Southern Ute Indian tribe, headquartered on the Southern Ute Indian Reservation near Ignacio. The population of our district is just over 750,000 people based on 2018 estimates. The leagues across the 3rd Congressional District have come together tonight to sponsor this forum. We are really excited at this because it's a first for us. The local league sponsors include Mesa, Montrose and Delta, Montezuma, La Plata, Gunnison Valley, Pueblo, and the San Luis Valley, which includes Rio Grande, Saguache, and Alamosa counties. Our co-sponsor is Fort Lewis College. Thank you to all of our sponsors. This is a historic year for the League of Women Voters. We celebrated our 100th anniversary in February, and it's not a coincidence that in August, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage and the passage of the 19th Amendment. Since the beginning, the League has focused on voter education, providing nonpartisan information to voters so that they have the knowledge and the confidence to exercise their right to vote. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Partnering in and hosting candidate and ballot issue forums is just one of the many activities the League engages in to accomplish our mission. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties, but we do support or oppose issues that do or do not agree with our state and national positions. We welcome those joining us by Zoom and those joining us by our Facebook Live feed. This forum is also being recorded by Durango Government TV, and a recording will be available on demand for viewing. Both the chat and the Q&A buttons have been disabled on Zoom as we accepted candidate questions in advance until noon today. Before I turn the program over to Tiffany, I think it's important to comment on the state of our nation. We are living in very tumultuous times with the protests across the United States and around the world. The League of Women Voters and Fort Lewis College have issued statements addressing these challenging times. We must all confront the racism that remains in our country, work to understand and ameliorate the harm that has been done to so many of our fellow Americans, and continue to stand up for justice for all. The League is committed to advocating for anti-racist policies at every level of government. Voting is one way to make our voices heard. The simple fact that you are listening tonight shows that you care about our democracy, so we thank you. So Next up is Tiffany, who is the La Plata County Clerk and Recorder. The clerk and recorders are responsible for managing the election process, along with a number of other very important duties. And I must say, they do an incredible job. They share our mission of safe, secure, and accessible voting. Tiffany, I'll turn it over to you to discuss the June 30th primary election.
Thank you, Jean. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. Thank you. So thank you guys. This is my first time of doing a virtual candidate forum, so I'm sure with everybody else. So thank you all for being here, and you get to see my beautiful backyard. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the college and City of Durango, the sponsors, for hosting this tonight. I think it's extremely important that our community can still learn about you guys and understand your particular positions. So as we all know, the ballots went out this week. So majority of the voters have received them. I would say if they haven't received them by Monday, to give your county clerk in your particular county a call and say, ask them where the ballot would be at. If you are not registered to vote, if you have an address change, there's still plenty of time to do that. You can go to govotecolorado.gov and update your registration. I do want to just continue to express that the unaffiliated voters in the counties are going to receive a ballot packet that has a Republican and Democratic ballot in it. You can only select one of those ballots and return it back to your particular county. So make sure that you do follow the directions and only vote one of those particular ballots. Also, I will tell you that we are also trying to figure out the whole COVID scenario, and election results may take a little bit more time than we're used to because we are limited as county clerks regarding the number of election judges that we are allowed in our facilities to process your ballot. So it's going to take us a little bit more time. So please be patient with your particular county clerks. We're doing the very best we can. We have great processes in place, but it will take us a little bit longer. However, we still plan on giving election results at our particular websites, but it might be a day or so after that, especially in the metro areas. For this particular district, I think that we're going to be able to get the results to you by the next day. I'm hopeful that it will be that night, but just please be patient with us. Also, for voters that are choosing to not utilize their mail ballot and come in person, we are still offering that opportunity. We want to make sure that people that have any kind of a disability that need our ADA accessible equipment, we have that option for you. And anybody that needs to register to vote, even up until election day, we are there for you. So an address changes, any of that, it may just take a little bit longer. Our processes may take a little bit more time because we have to limit the amount of people that come in through the door, and we have to disinfect it, everything after you come in. So please bear with us. This is new for us. We're doing everything we possibly can. And I will say that I'm very, very proud of Colorado. We've worked extremely hard to make sure that Colorado elections are the best in the nation, and they are. And we are set up in a very, very, very strong position. Mail ballots are very secure, and we also allow same-day registration and in-person opportunities. So I'm extremely proud of where we're at, and that voters are going to have the opportunity to ensure that they can cast a ballot in Colorado. If you have any questions, please reach out. If you're a La Plata County resident, to my office. That's laplatacountyclerk.org. Or if it's a different county, please reach out to your county clerks, and we are all here for you. I look forward to tonight, and I'm very, very proud of the league, the college, the sponsors, for everybody doing this for you guys tonight. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to the candidates because that's the important people that are on the show tonight. But please reach out to me if you have any questions specifically regarding the election and how Colorado works. Please call us, because there's a lot of misinformation out there regarding mail ballot and how we process the entire election. So please reach out to us, the experts that know what we're doing. I promise you. And candidates, good luck to each and every one of you. I know how hard it is. I'm proud of each and every one of you, and I look forward to tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for all of that wonderful information, and thank you, Jean, for that introduction. I'm Paul DeBell, joining you today from Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado, where we blend small class sizes and engaging faculty and unparalleled research opportunities to help students earn college degrees and chase their dreams. Fort Lewis College is also very proud to serve our country's diverse Indigenous nations and communities, and we include a land acknowledgement in important gatherings such as this, in which we acknowledge that the land that we gather on in Fort Lewis College and throughout the 3rd Congressional District are the ancestral lands and territories of the Nuchu Ute people, as well as the shared ceremonial lands of the Apache, Pueblos, Hopi, Zuni, and Dene nations. We believe it is important to provide this acknowledgement because the narratives of these lands have long been told from one perspective without full acknowledgement of the peoples who lived and continue to live on this land. So thank you so much for your attention in acknowledging this important history. Tonight, we are joined by 3 hopefuls for the job of representing Colorado's 3rd Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. This body is outlined in the very first article of the U.S. Constitution, empowering the U.S. House of Representatives to make legislation, control the country's purse strings, and serve as a check on the other branches of government. The candidates we will hear from tonight are vying for the opportunity to exercise these constitutional powers and represent you, the people of our vast and diverse district. One of the great things about a League of Women Voters candidate forum is that constituents get to ask questions of candidates about issues that interest them and hear the answers directly from the candidates without any editing or filtering, making it more like a town hall meeting than a debate. Many of you took advantage of the opportunity to submit questions in advance. We received 50 questions, and our question sorters, Trish Pegram and Terry Oliger, had their work really cut out for them. They reviewed the questions, sorted them by category, clarified them where necessary, and combined similar questions to avoid duplication before handing them over to me to ask our candidates. Needless to say, we won't get to all 50 questions during this forum, but we will pass along all of the questions that we do not ask to the candidates for their full consideration. So before we start, just a little bit of ground rules and setup. The League and the candidates have agreed on the following guidelines, and I'll briefly go over them. The general guidelines for the questions are that questions will be read by myself, the moderator. Questions will be framed to apply to all candidates and will not be addressed to a specific candidate. Questions that were submitted that were personal in nature, that attacked a candidate, or that were not relevant to the office for which the candidates are vying are not included. Today's forum will proceed with the following structure. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement at the beginning of our forum, and then they'll each have 1 minute to respond to each subsequent question before they deliver a 2-minute closing statement at the end. Candidates will see a timer on their screen so that we can stay on time and ensure that we get to lots of different questions of interest to the voters of our district. If an invited candidate in a contested race is unable or chooses not to attend the forum, they are invited to have the moderator read a prepared opening statement not to exceed 2 minutes. The order in which candidates will give their opening statement was determined by random drawing before the forum. We will cycle through that order in subsequent questions, and the original opening order will be reversed for closing statements. There are 4 candidates running in the primary election for Congressional District 3, 2 for the Democratic nomination and 2 for the Republican nomination. The Democratic and Republican winners will face off in the general election on November 3rd. There will be other candidates on that general election ballot who are running for this position from other political parties that do not require a primary election and are therefore not on the June primary election ballot. So, to get to our candidates, vying for the Democratic nomination, we have James Iacino and Diane Mitsch Bush. Vying for the Republican nomination, we have Lauren Boebert and Scott Tipton. Unfortunately, Mr. Tipton was unable to join us tonight. We extended invitations to all candidates on the same day, offering a number of different dates for this forum. Unfortunately, it was not until last Friday that we heard from the Tipton campaign that he would be unable to join us tonight. Consistent with our protocol, he was offered the opportunity to submit a 2-minute written opening that I would read. Unfortunately, we did not receive a statement at the designated deadline. So, we will begin with our opening comments. Based on the drawing before our forum began, the order will be Lauren Boebert, James Iacino, and Diane Mitsch Bush. So Lauren Boebert, please begin. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Boebert, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this candidate forum. We are in one of the most challenging times for our country. The COVID health scare, the murder of George Floyd, the murder of retired police Captain Dorn, the lawlessness that's followed. The promise of America tells us that we are better than this. To our life, in COVID and in social unrest, the reaction has been destructive to our lives and to our economy and to our conscience. I know that in my heart that we can do better, and we will do better. We have to be compassionate, we have to be principled, and we have to be strong. A few days ago, I spent my time in Denver, scrubbing graffiti off of the Capitol building, the People's House. And it made me even more determined to take my fight for freedom and equality and everything our founders and Constitution stand for and speak up and win this race. We need citizens to do their part. Another government program or punitive shutdown isn't going to solve this problem. Americans like you and me are going to be the solution. I'm a proud conservative, self-made, and I was raised in a Democrat home. My mom believed the lies of the failed promises and policies of the Democrat Party. And because of that, we grew up very dependent on government and very poor. But there was a promise of hope and opportunity that came from earning my first paycheck as a teenager. We don't need socialism and lawlessness being promoted by the Democrats. We don't need the heavy hand of government turning us into a nanny state. We need leadership that believes in America. I'm a proud conservative who believes in the foundational principles of our Constitution. I appreciate the opportunity to earn your vote because your vote for me is a vote for freedom. I'm Lauren Boebert, and my campaign site is laurenforcolorado.com.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Our next candidate will be James Iacino.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. I'm really excited to be here. For those that I haven't met, my name is James Iacino. I'm a third-generation Coloradan. My family came to Colorado 115 years ago, and my grandfather, at the age of 16, founded our family business, Seattle Fish Company, in 1918. Still today, we are a third-generation, 102-year-old Colorado-based family business. And I grew up working in the business, working the docks and the overnight shifts, loading trucks and driving trucks through college, and then going into sales and ultimately running the company for the past 10 years. And we've grown a proud Colorado company and over 200 jobs throughout the state by investing first and foremost in our workers. We've been a proud Teamsters union since the 1930s. We understand what it means to invest in our workers and great wages and great benefits to ensure they have the opportunity to succeed. And we've been champions for sustainability, leading the fight to protect our ocean health and provide people transparency in where their food comes from to make better choices for the health of our planet. We were the 2017 Green Business of the Year, and we're proud of the efforts that we made to reduce waste, reduce water, and our solar array on our headquarter building to help do our part to fight the climate crisis. And these are the values that are key to me, and they're the values that I want to take to Congress to represent Colorado's 3rd District. We need to fight for economic mobility for everybody, opportunities to diversify and bring new jobs to the Western Slope in Southern Colorado. We need to fight for healthcare. As the current crisis has showed us, there is no more important time to have access to great quality, affordable healthcare and ensure that everybody is covered and has the access that they need. And we need to fight climate change. We need to invest in protecting our public lands and ensure that we are doing our part through regenerative agriculture and promotion of renewable energy to continue to lead the fight to fight the climate crisis. And that's what I'm going to bring to represent you in Congress for the 3rd Congressional District.
Thank you very much, James. Our last opening statement will be from Diane Mitsch Bush.
Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the League of Women Voters. I'm Diane Mitsch Bush. I'm running for the U.S. House because our democracy is in danger. COVID and the murder of George Floyd have highlighted the deep structural inequalities in our society. Scott Tipton and the other multimillionaires in Congress work effectively for the top 1%, but not for the rest of us. Even before COVID, people were living paycheck to paycheck, and I know that struggle firsthand. I was raised by a single mom. We lived with constant financial uncertainty. She took out payday loans so we could make the rent. Then she joined the union. From then on, she was treated with dignity and respect at work, and we had more financial security. We were never affluent or privileged, but we had enough to get by. Before I was elected, I had a distinguished career as a social scientist, teaching and doing research. During that time, I was involved with Moot Cycles, a bike manufacturer. I know the outdoor industry and the issues it faces. My proposals to incentivize small manufacturing draw on my experience in that industry. I've worked with ranchers for 35 years. I know the issues they face. I'm a seasoned, tested, trusted public servant who's led calmly through disasters and crises, the swine flu, catastrophic wildfires, and the Great Recession. I've stood up to lobbyists, not just talked about it. And I'm proud to be endorsed in this primary by the Colorado AFL-CIO, Unite Here, and United Food and Commercial Workers. I'm running to use my proven success at bringing people together and solving problems to be your voice in the U.S. House.
Thank you so much, candidates, for those opening statements. So our first question from the audience will give you each a little bit of an opportunity to expand upon those opening statements. That first question is simply, why are you running for office? And so we're going to cycle through our original order. And that means that we'll start with James, then move to Diane, and then move to Lauren. So James, you have 1 minute.
I am running for Congress because I've never been more concerned about the future of our country. The divisiveness, the hatred that we see, people not willing to work together, and the lack of progress that's being made for everyday people every single day. I'm fighting because I have a 3-year-old boy and a 1-year-old boy, and I worry about the future for their environment, the future of their education and job opportunities. This is something that we need to address now. And the partisanship divide that has torn this country apart, we need people to step up and be willing to work together and bridge the gap and listen to each other and find those solutions that are going to help us all succeed. That's what I want to bring to Congress, and I think that there's never been a more important time to address the systemic challenges that we face, whether it's in healthcare or in social unrest that we're seeing right now with our police systems and the racism that this country's been built on. We need somebody who's willing to lead, work together, bring people together, and that's what I'm going to bring, and that's why I'm running for Congress.
Thank you, James. Diane, why are you running for office? 1 minute, please.
I'm running for the U.S. House, as I said, because our democracy is in danger. And I have the experience and the skills, the proven record of bringing people together, of working across the aisle, as I did in the Colorado House, and of coming up with practical, science-based solutions that help everyone. We need to listen to one another, and that's what I've always felt being a representative is. When I was in the Colorado House, I listened. When I was a county commissioner, I listened, and I always did my homework. I was so proud to represent my constituents, not lobbyists, not big money, not party leadership, and not Washington insiders. And that's what I want to do in the U.S. House. I want to listen to you, and I want to come up with practical, pragmatic solutions to help us all.
Thank you, Diane. And now, Lauren, why are you running for office, please? 1 minute.
I'm running for Congress because first and foremost, there is a battle for the heart and soul of our country. We see every day that Democrats want to take away everything, our rights, our freedom, our property, even our businesses. As a conservative, I know we just want to keep these things. And if I felt that our current leadership was effective, I would not be here, but they have been utterly silent on these issues that are so valuable to us. And I am tired of out of touch politicians over-regulating, overspending, and just being out of touch with us, the people. With our founding fathers, they intended for the United States House of Representatives to be citizen-led, not led by career politicians like Scott Tipton and Diane Mitsch Bush. So I am here to bring a fresh breath to Congress. Freedom is my motivator, and I'm here to do my part and serve my country.
Thank you, Lauren. So for our next question, we're going to turn to the issue of healthcare. So the question is, what is your stance on the expansion of or curtailment of the Affordable Health Care Act and the expansion of Medicare to include a public option? So as we siphon through this order, we'll start with Diane and then move to Lauren and then James for this. So Diane, 1 minute, please.
We're going to see a Supreme Court case in October, which is going to gut much of the Affordable Care Act, particularly the provisions that so many people depend on, coverage for pre-existing conditions, and a low ratio of increase in price as you age. That's critical. I heard that in the Colorado House, and I heard it when I was county commissioner. The Affordable Care Act provides a great deal of protection for people. But we need also to have a public option as we move towards more healthcare for everyone. But this is triage. In January, we're going to need to focus in on protecting coverage for pre-existing conditions. We're going to have to end surprise billing. We're going to have to help Medicare, authorize Medicare to negotiate for drug prices. Currently, the VA does negotiate and their prices are less than a third of Medicare's. And I know people who are struggling so hard to afford those drugs. And we also need to focus on rural health clinics, making sure that they're funded, because that's what so many people rely on.
Thank you, Diane. Next, we will go to Lauren. 1 minute, please, Lauren.
The third-party payer system we use now is broken. Insurance companies and the government are far too involved, and consumers like you and me are too much at their mercy. There isn't a free market for most healthcare right now. We don't encourage price competition, and by design, to the benefit of health insurers and administrators, it's complicated. The single-payer system, loved by the Democrats, relies on rationing. So we'd be at risk for fewer services from fewer providers and waiting far too long for very valuable care. And worse, we would be relying on centralized government decision makers. When you make health insurance personal and portable, you start aligning incentives and getting the best outcomes. Nobody in the current system is incented to change because it's very profitable. And the Democrats fundamentally believe in government control and government solutions. So that isn't the path that they want to go down. That leaves real change for candidates like me who actually want the best outcome for people like you and me.
Thank you, Lauren. And then rounding out this round on healthcare, James, please respond in 1 minute.
So we need universal coverage for healthcare now. We need to get everybody covered. And that starts with protecting the ACA benefits that people do have. Still with that, we don't have choice on the Western Slope. And in much of the district, you have one provider. And the average family I talk to spends $2,000 a month for a $10,000 high deductible plan. We've seen premiums go up 60% since Scott Tipton's been in office. We have no ability to negotiate prescription drug pricing, and the coverage for mental health care isn't there. That's why I'm an advocate for a public option. I think that we need to get everybody covered who is not covered now. However, I've spoken to a number of companies and union companies who have spent years and decades giving up wage increases for great benefits, and they should absolutely have that right. But we need to take the pressure off of small businesses, ensure that everybody is covered and has the right to mental health care access, women's health care, lower prescription drug costs, and lower premiums. And that's what we need to accomplish first thing when we're in Congress.
Thank you, James. So for our next question from the audience, we're going to turn to affordable housing. The question reads, a lack of affordable housing underlies or exacerbates many other social problems, including homelessness, substance abuse, and crime. What should the federal government do to help address this issue? And we're going to start with Lauren.
I think first and foremost, communities are a huge source there for to look for. Free markets make all the difference. And when you have communities involved, they can really help to step up where people are hurting. We see a large homeless population in these Democrat-run cities. And we need communities to work on this. I don't think that it's a federal government issue. This is something that should be community-driven. And community banks need to make loans available and easier to get for the people that are right there close to home for them. Even our churches have been overregulated and they aren't able to step in and help these people who are in need like they wanted to. And really, it comes down to good jobs in the community, and that helps make everything more affordable.
Thank you, Lauren. Next, we'll go to James. What is your response, please?
So housing is probably the second highest cost that I hear throughout the district, and people are struggling with affordable housing on all levels. And this is something that I do believe can best be handled at the local and state level. And the federal government's role is to be able to provide the funding necessary for local governments to determine how they can best put the incentives and matching programs in place to develop affordable housing that meets their needs, whether it's workplace housing in some of the higher cost tourist parts of the district, or simply community centers and opportunities in other parts and other cities the level of cost for housing is different based on where you go. And the best people to understand that are local governments, the counties, and the municipalities, to understand how they can best apply those funds. The federal government's role is to provide that support, disperse that money and those incentives so that it can best be applied at the local level.
Thank you, James. And Diane, what is your response to the federal government's role in affordable housing?
I've worked on affordable housing issues both in our county and throughout the Western Slope for 20 years. Many of our counties have developed housing authorities, which is a critical partnership between the public and private sector. And they've worked very well to round up funding from the community. We also need to have the innovation that our local communities have with their specific knowledge of the problems in their community. But unless we have federal government programs like Section 8 housing, and unless we get rid of redlining finally at the federal level, these opportunities are not going to be shared by everyone. We need to focus in on some of the issues during the financial crisis, which of course revolved around housing, and how to continue to fix those. Many people, of course, lost their homes in the Great Recession, and many people are still struggling to recover from that. So I believe a combination of local, state, and federal policies, public-private policies, can help.
Thank you very much to all of our candidates for those answers. So our next few questions coming from the audience have to do with a very pressing issue in the country right now. And the first of those questions is, how would you address the racial inequality and widening income gap in the United States as a congressperson? For this round, we're going to go James, Diane, Lauren. So James, it's your stage. How would you address inequality?
So we've seen in the killings of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and countless others, and underlying the racism that this country has been built on, and the systemic problems that we face, and the inequalities that we see throughout our system, whether it's in healthcare, education, policing, and response. This is something that has not been addressed in the past, and this is the moment in time where we can take the opportunity to address that. I think as we look at inequality specifically in the police brutality that we've seen recently, opportunities to remove the qualified immunity for police officers, the demilitarization of our police, and focused on community-based policing to ensure that everybody has access to respond to the problems that are needed at the time, whether it's healthcare workers, community service officers, mental health care professionals. There's things that all the police do not need to be responding to with a gun and a badge, and that's something that we can invest in to ensure that we have community service to provide that equality.
Thank you, James. Next, we'll turn to Diane.
The inequality that we've so long seen starts at birth. Mothers of kids who can apply for WIC do so, but the lack of health care, the lack of nutrition in some of our communities makes it difficult. That then moves on to the lack of preschool. We need universal preschool. Then we move on to public education. We need public education that is funded for everyone. And we don't have that now. Then, most importantly of all, as people are done with school, we need living wage jobs and opportunities for mobility. And one of the ways to do that is to build infrastructure, to invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure can provide those kinds of living wage jobs, provided there are also provisions to prevent discrimination by race or gender and other features. So we have to start to build living wage jobs, and public-private partnerships are a really good way to do that.
Thank you, Diane. And finally, Lauren, what is your response, please?
Income equality comes from a lack of upward mobility in our society. Income equality comes from a lack of educational opportunities. We need school choice. We need more emphasis on trade schools. We need more opportunities for our churches to get involved. I was involved in my local church for 7 years, counseling at-risk women. And let me tell you, race never came up, but opportunity sure did. Opportunities are endless for Americans here in our country. And I brought to them a message of hope, confident expectation that they could have a prosperous future if they exercise personal responsibility. We need opportunity. I had an opportunity at a very young age to get a job at the local McDonald's and earn a living. And that proved to me at a very young age that I could do a better job taking care of myself than the government ever did. And so we just need to, those people who've grown up in these Democrat houses, they need to know that dependency does not work.
And thank you very much, candidates. I really want to pause and say I appreciate the candidates. You are doing so great on time. You're a moderator's dream. But in this new Zoom world, can we remember to try and mute and unmute ourselves? I'm struggling with that too, just for background noise. So thank you very much. So our next question is going to be on a very similar vein. As you likely know, both Republican and Democratic leaders in the House of Representatives are developing policing reforms in response to recent events. What are your thoughts on police reform, and what could constituents expect to see from you on this front in Congress? For this question, we're going to start with Diane.
I support the Justice and Policing Act that was just introduced, HR 7120. It does a whole variety of things, including accountability, education, and training. And especially, it prohibits chokeholds, it prohibits no-knock warrants, and it provides a funding way to encourage local departments, police departments, and state police to engage in positive activities. Now grants, the LEA grants, law enforcement administration grants, will be based on adherence to the principles of policing that respect everyone's rights. My first husband was a police officer before we moved to Colorado 43 years ago. And he knew firsthand what difference it made to have training, good training, in how to de-escalate, not escalate. And that's one of the things this bill focuses on, de-escalating the use of force, because once you start escalating, it continues to escalate.
Thank you, Diane. So for our next response on this question, we are going to turn to Lauren.
I honestly think it's insane that we even have to have a discussion about defunding or disbanding our police department. I stand strongly in favor of our law enforcement officers, and I pray for their safety and wisdom in these situations that they use on a regular basis. I am the law and order candidate. There's no room for bad police, and there's no room for racism, but we do need to enforce our laws. Mandate body and dash cams for everyone's safety, including the police. Show compassion and empathy, but never accept looting and violence. All Americans deserve and should expect peace and safety in their communities. Defunding or eliminating the police seems like a short-term extreme overreaction to deep-seated issues that needs to be addressed in local communities and across our country. But defunding our police is not the answer.
Thank you, Lauren. And next we'll turn to James. What is your response, please?
So I would lean in and you know, this is our opportunity as a country to come together and affect the change that we need to see for so long. And again, our military equipment does not need to be going to our police officers. This is something that creates an even worse response, creates a fear in a group that is supposed to be there to protect and to serve the community the best way they can. You know, a lot of the provisions that were just proposed in the House yesterday, I absolutely agree with. The National Registry, which is something that we see here in rural Colorado, can be an issue where a police officer can be convicted of abuse or have a challenge in their previous job and then simply switch departments. So a national registry is necessary, manning chokeholds, ensuring that, you know, again, we are focused on community policing, hiring people from the community and giving a number of tools to address the different issues we face, whether that's mental health care services, homeless services, healthcare providers. We need to ensure that the community is responding in that way rather than just the military response.
Thank you for that. So next, the next audience question, I believe, is from a colleague of my own at Fort Lewis College. As noted in our land acknowledgement and by Jean in reference to our district's 2 Ute nations, Indigenous people are still here and would be your constituents were you to represent our district in Washington. How do you plan to reach out to Indigenous communities and the many different communities in our vast district to represent all of the people of the Colorado 3rd? So for this question, we're going to go Lauren, James, Diane. So Lauren, you have 1 minute, please.
So I've actually already spent time on our reservations here in Colorado, and I was with Chairman Hart, and he toured me around some of his great land there. Indians got the short end of the stick here in America. I will agree with that. But I want to be a good listener, and I want to represent all of the people here in Colorado. We are all equal. And I also want to share with them that any federal socialist state that is being offered to them isn't the best answer. Capitalism is the best answer. We all want opportunity. Why should we force this indigenous population to be under socialism and communist policies? It's not fair to them. They are here and they want an opportunity just like the rest of American citizens.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from James.
In order to best represent the communities we serve, we need to meet people where they are. This requires traveling throughout the district and meeting people and going to the reservations and understanding the leaders and the real problems that they have there. Whether it's lack of healthcare access, it's lack of education and economic opportunities that have placed them behind and again have systemically oppressed people for so long. You'll only learn that by meeting people where they are. You have to learn the different needs of people throughout the district in order to be the best representative that you can be. And by traveling and understanding the economic needs, the social needs of the community, meeting with leadership, and really engaging in the community, that's the only way you're going to best be able to go to DC and advocate for the responsible policies that we are going to need to best address and help those and help us progress as a district and as a state and as a nation.
All right, and thank you. Next, we'll hear from Diane.
We have to remember in all our policymaking that the Mountain Utes and the Southern Utes are sovereign nations. And again in our history, treaties with them and the other sovereign nations have been broken. One of the long ago practices that I hope to really focus on is consultation. Consultation is required with these sovereign nations whenever there is a federal policy that affects them. And one of the most recent egregious examples of not doing that was the decimation of the Bears Ears Monument. The Navajos, the Utes, a whole host of nations asked to be consulted and asked to work with the president. They refused. Washington refused. And that is what we've done time and time again. It's one of the reasons that these sovereign nations, the Ute people, both the tribes, have fallen so far behind. And I will represent those tribes. I will represent those nations.
Thanks to all 3 of you for your responses. Our next audience question turns to the question of the environment. So the question reads, is protection of the environment, for instance, concerning climate change, alternative energy, wilderness protection, endangered species and water, a priority for you? Why or why not? And how would you show your commitment to these issues? So for this round, we're going to start with James.
The answer is yes, absolutely. It's a great priority for me, and it's something that I've spent my career doing is fighting for sustainability and for our planet and the health of our planet on a global scale as a small family business in Colorado. And that's something I plan to bring. We have incredible natural resources here, and Colorado has the opportunity to lead in the fight against the climate crisis and ensure that we're doing our part to continue growth in renewable energy, solar and wind production down in Pueblo and throughout the district. These bring new jobs. We can invest as a federal government in R&D for storage technology, infrastructure to replace our power grids and ensure the efficient transmission of energy in our local communities. We can invest in our agriculture community with healthy soil, regenerative agriculture, which puts more water in the ground, allows it to retain more water, stave off wildfire and drought, promote biodiversity, and is the #1 way to sequester carbon on the planet. We have an incredible opportunity here in Colorado to do just that, and that's what I would fight for when I'm in Congress, to ensure we are leading on the fight against the climate crisis.
Thank you, James. And next we'll hear from Diane on this issue.
Climate action and protecting our environment have been things that I've worked on as a priority, and they will be a top priority. As a county commissioner, I got our county to establish energy service contracting, which shrunk our greenhouse gas footprint and saved the people around county $60,000 the very first year. As a state representative, I was recognized by Conservation Colorado as the 2017 Legislator of the Year. That was because I stood up to protect our public lands in a number of bills, and I also had bills that protected the environment and made the the regulations on oil spills much stricter in our state. And I worked with the oil and gas industry and environmentalists and ranchers and communities on that. You have to work together with people. But the key takeaway here is it's not the environment or your job. It's not climate change or your income. It's that both protecting the environment and fighting climate change actually produce new jobs and better incomes.
Thank you, Diane. And now we'll turn to Lauren to hear about this topic.
Well, typically conservatives get a bad rap when it comes to being good stewards of our environment, but we want clean water, we want clean air. We care about these things, but we don't necessarily agree with the extremist viewpoints of the left and the overregulation of our good, clean energy industry. Western Colorado has some of the richest, cleanest resources in the entire world, and Democrats are very disingenuous when it comes to these things because they believe that wind and solar are the answer, and they don't promote nuclear. And it's hard for conservatives like me to take all the criticism from being against joining something like the Paris Accord when the left can't even clean up Flint, Michigan's water. But our resources are so important to me. I fought to save our national popular vote compact to get that on the ballot and save our electoral college votes, because that's what's attached to our votes. Our Colorado resources, they will be promised right down to California when they get our votes for president of the United States.
Thank you, Lauren. So next we will turn to another audience question actually related to what you were just talking about, Lauren. This questioner asks, how will you help keep our elections safe and free from interference? And specifically, they'd like to know whether you support mail-in ballots. So for this question, we're going to start with Diane.
I was the co-sponsor of House Bill 1303, which provided a number of protections for elections in Colorado, especially mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots have proved to be secure, they have proved to be safe from fraud, and most importantly, they have allowed more people, especially working people who can't take time off, to vote. So I think having national mail-in ballots would be a critical piece of making our elections more secure, especially secure from hackers. And also looking more carefully to cybersecurity at the national level, because that's where it has to be done more generally, both in terms of the military and defense, but also in terms of securing our elections. Having secure elections is critical. But another piece of elections, and Scott Tipton voted against this one, was H.R. 1. It passed the House in 2019, and it would have restored many of the voting rights that were taken away in the last Congress and by the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Diane. Next, we'll turn to Lauren.
I guess I could say that I'm okay with mail-in ballots for our primary, but not a general election. I appreciate the work of our Homeland Security efforts and everything that they do to keep bad actors out of our systems. I'm glad that we have local elections with local oversight. I don't want it centralized. And I really just worry about security if we go digital. There are a lot of problems when we start to see these mail-in ballots. And I think that we could even attribute Colorado having, the Colorado Democrats having a supermajority to mail-in ballots. It's kind of interesting how it went that way. But we should always be concerned about fair elections in every part of this cycle.
Thank you, Lauren. And now we'll hear from James.
Voting is our most fundamental right as Americans, and we need to do absolutely everything we can to protect that right. Starting with ensuring the protections of the Voting Rights Act and ensuring that we are doing everything we can to get every person's vote to count. And the best way to do that is universal vote by mail. We've proven this in Colorado, that this is a system that works with the least amount of fraud, regardless of what's said on TV sometimes. This is a system that works, and it allows people to vote in a safe environment, to vote securely, and to ensure that we're getting as much of the vote counted, where people cannot be intimidated or their rights cannot be threatened. And this also requires us fully supporting our United States Postal Service. This is a way that we can ensure that everybody's getting their mail that is protected. It is an institution as old as this country. And by doing those things, ensuring the rights to vote are protected, we can ensure that we are moving this country forward and protecting people's rights.
Thank you, James. So for our next question, the person asks, what is your position on a renewal of the assault weapons ban and on universal background checks? And for this question, we're going to start with Lauren.
So I don't believe in the term assault weapons. Assault is a behavior and a weapon is a thing. I believe that our rights under the Constitution are God-given and absolute for each and every individual. I believe the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I believe reasonable people will disagree, and that's why we have elections, and that's why we have a Supreme Court. I am pro-Constitution. I am pro-Second Amendment. I disagree with these overreaching gun control laws and gun grabs, especially like red flag laws, because I believe that they are unconstitutional. And the left has gone from saying that only police should have guns to saying that the police should be defunded and disbanded. So I think that's why you see everyday ordinary Americans buying more guns. 1.7 million in May this year alone. Americans will be protected either by their police or by themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see where the left lands on this issue. I'm proud to be on the side of law and order and our Constitution.
James, did you hear? It's your turn to respond about.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second, so no worries.
No worries. So the question is your position on a renewal of the assault weapons ban and on universal background checks. Thank you.
Yeah, so I am a gun owner, and I absolutely support everybody's right to own a gun, as we have in the Constitution. And when we talk about guns and gun safety, we talk about responsible gun ownership. And for us, that means universal background checks, ensuring that we're closing loopholes to understand that people that shouldn't have guns, right? If you have a felony record, if you are a threat to yourself or others, that's something that we can use universal background checks to determine to prevent people that shouldn't have guns from having them in the first place. In addition to that, people in a mental health crisis that are suffering, the authorities should absolutely have the right to temporarily remove those weapons from people and allow them to have representation to petition a judge to get those guns back. And those, I think, are common sense reforms that we've taken here in Colorado that we should promote on a federal level to ensure that rights are protected, that we're promoting responsible gun safety, and ensuring that people have the right to own a gun and to operate it safely.
Thank you, James. And finally, we'll hear from Diane on this issue.
I proudly voted for universal background checks in Colorado. Since 2013, we have prevented over 250, at least, some years over 300, convicted violent felons from easily obtaining weapons. That would be one of my top priorities in the U.S. House. I would co-sponsor a universal background checks bill. Studies show that the majority of Americans, and certainly the majority of Coloradans, agree that universal background checks help and work and approve of universal background checks. As I mentioned, my first husband was a police officer, and the scariest thing for him was going into a domestic violence situation. And that's a situation where it's passion that rules, and both the law enforcement officer and, of course, others in the room are at great danger. One of the things that universal background checks do is find people who are under restraining orders or have been convicted of domestic violence or other forms of assault. And that's critical in lowering violence against women and families.
Thank you all for those responses. So our next audience question concerns the Equal Rights Amendment. They ask, is there any reason the Equal Rights Amendment should not be ratified? And what would you do about the Equal Rights Amendment to either move it forward or not? So for this question, we're going to start with.
Couldn't hear you. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry, let me repeat then. So this questioner asks about the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, asking if there's any reason the Equal Rights Amendment should not be ratified. What would you do to ensure that it moves forward if you were elected? And we'll start with James.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, I absolutely believe that the Equal Rights Amendment should be ratified. This is something that is long overdue, and I'm hopeful that this is a situation where clearly Virginia is stepping up, and this is an opportunity to enshrine this protection in our Constitution. However, it doesn't go far enough, and I think this is an opportunity for us to guarantee equal rights for all, and that can be based on sex, on race, on gender, sexuality, whatever we're talking about. This is an opportunity for us to extend equal rights protection to everybody, and that's what we should be fighting for. And so, I would promote additional protections and ensuring that we are going far to ensure that everybody has equal rights in this country, and not stopping with the progress that was made over the last number of decades to get this finally ratified. And we should absolutely have it in our Constitution.
Thank you, James. Next, we'll hear from Diane on this issue.
I strongly support the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's long past due, and I was thrilled when Virginia voted to pass it. But right now it's at an impasse at the federal level because some arcane language has been played with, and so it's stalled. And we need to deal with that as soon as we can, and I will be very seriously dealing with that in 2021 in January. You may not know part of the story behind not just the Equal Rights Amendment, but adding the word sex to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It was added as a joke by a Southern senator because he thought it would tank the Civil Rights Bill by adding women. Surely no one could approve of that. Well, I think today we all approve of women having equal rights, and I will fight, just as I have all my adult life, for women's rights.
Thank you, Diane. And now we'll hear from Lauren on this issue.
I don't believe that this needs to be ratified. Women already have all the rights that men have under the Constitution. We just need to stick up for them. I'm tired of being on the defense of our Constitution. It's time that we assert our constitutional rights. Everything in there is already law. And there are some really challenging parts to this that would require women to work in certain military positions and the like. I really worry about the consequences of poor legislation. We're for equal rights for everyone, and we have that here in America. There's really not much more to say to that. If you really want women to feel empowered, then let them exercise their Second Amendment, because that really is the truest equalizer here in America.
Okay, thank you all very much for those thoughtful responses. So our next question, the questioner asks, how important is the United States Postal Service to Colorado and to the nation? What would you do to ensure the viability of U.S. mail? And for this question, we're going to start with Diane.
The U.S. Postal Service is critical to our country. It's critical for mail-in ballots. It's critical for people getting their prescriptions via mail. It's critical for families communicating still, and especially so in rural areas. The major feature that has led to the financial issues in the Postal Service is a ridiculous provision that was put into law that requires the Postal Service to upfront for 10 years, provide for its retirees' money almost in whole. No private business has that. No other public agency has that. You don't have to put up the money beforehand. That's one of the things that started to lead to financial problems with the Postal Service in 2012. So I would strongly support some bills that have already been offered, actually, to change that and get rid of it and have a more realistic retirement program for the Postal Service. And then there are other kinds of services the Postal Service could offer, but we'll learn about those later.
Thank you, Diane. So next on this issue, we'll hear from Lauren.
Simply put, fund it. We will always have the U.S. mail. Obviously, FedEx and UPS prove that there are efficiencies that we can learn from, but we need to be realistic about cost structure, be flexible to adopt to current times. I don't see any disagreement here. I mean, there are fewer people who use the mail, but ultimately, I believe that this needs to be funded. We just need to be efficient with it.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And now we'll hear from James.
The United States Postal Service is a guarantee to this country since the founding of this country, and it's something we absolutely need to protect. You know, this is what delivers medications, our mail-in ballots, and essential services throughout, rural Colorado, rural America. And this is something that we absolutely need to protect. It absolutely requires funding and ensuring that the pensions for the retirees are able to be managed as traditional pensions. Right now, they are tied strictly to bonds, which we know are paying out at near 0%, and that's causing a negative gap each year that's increasing this funding gap. We should allow our Postal Service to be able to change the pricing of stamps to be able to compete and ensure that it's operating as a true nonprofit. And I'm proud to be endorsed by the American Postal Service Union retired Denver Metro Area Retirees Chapter. Sorry, it's a long name there. And you know what? I stand up for the post office, and it's something that we're going to ensure is in place for a long time going forward.
Thank you very much for that. So I want to thank our candidates again for being so timely and concise in their responses. We got through more questions than I think that anybody in the organizing team hoped for. So thank you so much for that. And now we're going to move on to our candidates' closing statements. So as a reminder, our candidates will each have 2 minutes to deliver a closing statement. And we are going to proceed in the reverse order from the order that we had opening statements. And so the order will be Diane, then James, and then Lauren. So Diane, please, your closing statement for us.
The Lincoln Institute ads ask, are you going to vote for Trump or for America? That's what I'll ask Scott Tipton every day of this campaign. When he was asked about separating parents and children, he said, we need secure borders. Instead of working diligently to respond to COVID-19, he tried to score political points for Trump by attacking our governor's work to make Colorado safer. Instead of standing up for us, he says one thing and does another. He voted against outdoor recreation and for selling off our public lands, against protections for pre-existing conditions and for big pharma, and to privatize Medicare. Tipton votes against public education, environmental protection, renewables, family agriculture. My record shows I've delivered on all of these as a public servant. Women's rights are under attack. Tipton has voted to defund Planned Parenthood multiple times, blocking access to critical healthcare services. My record shows that I've always stood up for women's rights, and that's why Planned Parenthood has endorsed me in this primary. I'll go on the offense every day and call Tipton out on his shameful record of not representing us. We need an experienced, tested, trusted leader who has a proven record of delivering. I've stood up to, not for, two lobbyists and big money, not just talked about it. And that's who I am, and that's why I'll beat Tipton. You know, talk is cheap in elections, and my record shows I've delivered for rural Colorado, and I've brought people together. I will do that and more for you in the U.S. House, and I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane Mitsch Bush. Next, we'll hear the closing statement from James Iacino.
So as we've said, there is no more important election in this time that we have right now. And this is our opportunity for real change. The country has never been more divided, and the hatred, the rhetoric that we're seeing, the inability to want to work together, work across the aisle and actually get things done, that's what we need. And we need new leadership in DC to represent us. Scott Tipton has clearly not been a representative for our district for all of the reasons Diane just mentioned. And we know that. But what we need right now is new leadership. And we need somebody who's willing to step up, who has a proven record of growing jobs in Colorado, fighting for our environment, and investing in our working class to ensure that everybody has the opportunity to succeed. And this is our moment. And no matter what, what's most important is that we win. And I am the candidate that can win against Scott Tipton. And I'm proud to have traveled the district, winning top line at state assembly in our primary, 71% of the vote out of Pueblo, which is key to winning the district. We've been endorsed by former Secretary Ken Salazar, Congressman John Salazar, Attorney General Phil Weiser, former State Senator Gail Schwartz, and 30 other elected and former elected officials throughout the district. They know that I'm a candidate that can win against Scott Tipton, and we are all tired. No matter who I talk to, Democrats, Independents, Republicans throughout the district, they are tired of Scott Tipton not doing anything to address the healthcare costs that have gotten out of control, the lack of economic opportunity and the income inequality that we see, not fighting to protect our public lands and fight for clean water and clean air, and stand up to this president who's doing everything he can to take our country backwards every single day. We need somebody who's willing to stand up and fight for the people of Colorado. That is something that I'm going to do. I'm going to work hard every day to get that done. It is time for new leadership, and I am here and proud to be running. For more information, please go to my website, jamesforcolorado.com, and I look forward to seeing you all out there as soon as we're able to again. Thank you.
Thank you, James Iacino. And finally, Lauren Boebert, your closing statement, please.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And I don't disagree with too much of what the other candidates said there. This is a very important election. It's the difference between freedom and socialism. Our district deserves a fighter who shows up and stands up for freedom. Scott Tipton chose not to be here today, just like he chose to buy his way onto the ballot instead of facing Republican delegates at convention. I'm the top line Republican ballot candidate for a good reason. In December, Scott Tipton voted alongside Nancy Pelosi to give millions amnesty. In April, he joined AOC and her squad to hand Boulder a bailout. That's not what we elected him to do. I've spent my time standing up for our Constitution and standing up for freedom. I stood up to former presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, and I told him, hell no, you're not taking our guns. I spent months making sure Democrats wouldn't steal Colorado's vote for President Trump, and I helped stop Democrats from giving our votes to California. Your vote for me is a vote for freedom. Your vote for me is to get a fighter who lets everyone know we don't want the left's socialism or nanny state policies. We just want to be free. I want to be held accountable. And I have my contract with Colorado that you can all find on my website, laurenforcolorado.com. I am for accountability and transparency. And there you can find everything that I stand for and what I want to be held accountable to as I serve as your representative here in the 3rd District. I'm Lauren Boebert. I appreciate your support and your vote. And most of all, as a conservative, I am for term limits, and I am term limiting Scott Tipton.
Thank you, Lauren Boebert. I want to thank all of the candidates for participating in tonight's forum and for their willingness to serve. And thanks to all of you who submitted questions and have joined us virtually tonight. Thanks as well to the City of Durango and Durango Government Television for recording this forum for later replay. Durango television programming can be viewed in La Plata County on Charter Spectrum channels 191 and 981, over the air for antenna users on channels 10.1 and 10.2, and of course, streaming online at durangogov.org/DGOV. Please be sure to visit the website vote411.org for information about the candidates in all of the primary races across the state. Vote411.org is also your one-stop shop for voter registration and general voter information. As Tiffany mentioned earlier, to verify your registration, you can visit the website govotecolorado.com. A special thanks to Karen McManus and Diane Goodchild, Ross and Ellen Park, Mitchell Carter, and Victor Locke for making this forum a reality. And most importantly, thank you to our viewers and the people of this great district. Thank you for taking your voting responsibilities seriously. It is you who will make our democracy work. Election Day is June 30th. Remember to vote. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a very good night.